Hello and welcome back to Strong Woman High's Dash Life is a Mishmash. This will be one of our first podcasts of the new structure that we have in Strong Woman Highs. And today's guest, we have Jemma Dymond. Welcome to the show, Jemma.
Thank you so much for having me, Becca. As I've been as subtle as a hand grenade in your DMs about wanting to be on this podcast, I'm so
No, that's what I like. If you again, if anyone wants to be on the podcast, just send me a DM because that's the whole goal of it this year is to get as many strong women in this podcast as we possibly can and get as much exposure as we can as well. So, no, you are more than welcome, and I'm very grateful that you've sacrificed some time to be on this ridiculousness. Would you like to do a quick introduction, elevator pitch? Imagine I'd met you in an elevator and I was like, "Who are you? What's it all about? Like, tell me a bit about yourself."
So I'm a retired rugby player. I say the world's most consistently inconsistent strong woman because I've had a on-off journey with injuries over the last 2 years, but also never placed below second in a comp.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I'm very average at strong woman, but coming through, and I'm married to Matt Dymond, the under 90s Matt Dymond, not the opened Matt Dymond, which gets very confusing.
Yeah.
Becca once described as a rhino.
Yeah, I know, and he still uses that Mr. Blobby strongman name. It's so terrible. He needs to be back to Rhino. It was a much better nickname.
He's threatened me with divorce for even mentioning it, so...
We won't mention it again then, just in case.
We got married this year like you did, and it's become a running joke in our household. I'm like, that sock has got way too much of a hole in it. Divorce. Like, it's just a running joke in our household. Your knee sleeves are cheesy. Divorce.
Yeah, it feels like it's like the new thing, isn't it? I was with our lad for like 10 years before we got married, but now I feel like I can properly use it against him. Like I've been like not begging, but I was waiting for a proposal for ages, and then we finally got married, and now literally anything he does wrong, I'm like, fuck, I'm gonna divorce you.
We changed the story of how Matt and I met, like pretty much every time we tell it. I'm like, yeah, I just found him wandering along the A30. He looked real scared, so I put him in the car and kept him.
Like a stray dog.
But that was my introduction to Strong Woman as well, was so our second ever date, we went to his gym, and like I'd never even watched Strongman at Christmas. Like I come from such a non-strongman world. And so we went to his gym and he set up like a little log press for me and showed me how to do it. And I'm stood there like strict pressing a 40-kilo log, being like, is this good? And there was just like a tear of pride in his eye. And I think that was the moment, like that was the moment he knew that, she was the one kind of thing, I think.
Yeah, it's a good starting point, a 40-kilo strict press. Like, I don't think I can do that now.
I'm like 3 years on, and we still struggle to get me to use leg drive in any pressing, but I consider that my sparkle.
Imagine how good you'd be if you learned how to use your legs. Bloody hell, I wear. This is the year. 2025 will be the year of Jemma using her legs.
No, I just want to strict press out of spite now,
Said nobody ever.
Everything out of spite.
You're like the absolute opposite end of a natty female athlete, aren't you?
Why split jerk when you can strip press,
No, can't relate. So, new to the sport then. Next 3 years in, fairly fresh still. What has been your strong woman high?
I think for me, I love a tractor pull. So I did a local comp called Queen of the Hill that's run in Honiton, and they have a tractor pull every year. And what I found is that it's basically the same technique I used to use in a scrum in rugby, but just with a tractor attached instead of like someone's head up my arse. So I have found that like I can run basically with a tractor, and it's the same muscle, same memory, and it just looks really cool. So yeah, for me, absolutely tractor pulls all day.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love a truck pull. I feel like they don't use them that often in competitions because obviously it's a hard setup and it is quite an expensive event to run, and a tractor sounds absolutely class. Are you finding that there's a lot of carryover from rugby to strong woman then? Because it does feel like that it would be a good pre-strong woman sport to have been in.
100%. Like I came into it with obviously quite good conditioning. I was playing at Championship 2 level rugby, so that's about roughly 2 divisions below Premiership. So in women's rugby, you've got the Premiership, Champs 1, Champs 2, which are 2 like very similar leagues, and then you've got like National Challenge 1, 2, 3, and then Inner Warrior, which is a really cool level, which is just designed to get like more women in the sport. So I was playing at Champs 2 and coming in well conditioned. I lost 30 kilos and a terrible boyfriend during COVID. And so I came out of COVID like fit, lean, strong, ready to smash my rugby. And when I felt that I was ready to kind of look at those next stages post rugby, met Matt, and he was like, yeah, you need to try this. Like, you need to try this. And I just found that like all of the muscle fibers, all of the processes that I had trained my body for rugby just fell into strong woman. Like it just felt, I was like, this feels same, but different.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What was the reason behind stopping rugby then?
I actually had a progesterone jab almost 2 years ago, and I had been getting to the point where my body was ready to not be run over by 100-kilo women several times a week. But
Yeah.
this jab basically messed up something in my nervous system, and I have been having ongoing hip back pain. I was having back spasms from my ribs to my knees, and I was
Oh,
like, well, I can't even stand up this week, so I definitely can't be in a scrum. And
yeah.
it kind of felt easier for me to control the inevitable decision and retire on my terms rather than like end up really hurting myself and having to retire. Like I said, almost 2 years on from this jab, and I'm still not 110% fixed, and I don't know if I ever will be. But my body basically reacted really badly to it, and yeah, here we are. We're getting there though. I competed about a week ago, 2 weeks ago now, and in Cornwall's most powerful little bench and deadlift comp, which was really fun. Yeah, the rebuild continues.
Oh, amazing. So with that, I'm just asking you loads of questions now that we've gone off track again, which I knew would happen straight away. But the progesterone jab, was that for contraception? You don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, by the way.
Yeah, no, I've spoken about it online because I'm like, I don't care if I overshare because I'm just like people can scroll on. It doesn't harm me to put more stuff out, and I've had endometriosis really severely, so to the point I've had
Right.
like 2 laparoscopies. I've had an ovary removed. My body just doesn't like being female very much, so
Right.
yeah, my body just doesn't really like it. So I tried this jab to just try and balance my hormone levels out and control things for a bit. And yeah, it just went aggressively wrong for me. I went from
Oh,
picking up
God.
like a 160 deadlift comfortably to literally my back feeling like it was going to collapse if I picked up a 30-kilo barbell. Like it was insane.
Crazy. I know that there is side effects such as that to the progesterone jabs and the depot injections and stuff like that. But I would imagine, were you told about any of those side effects when you got that jab?
As ever, that I was told a mixed bag. I was told that there are potential side effects, but the thing is with most of these jabs, like you look at the actual research on them and not just the jabs, the pills, all of it. This is my little kind of, I don't know, tin hat moment, but most of them are not actually that well tested or researched. So, for example, it's just coming out of the same jab that I had now increases your chance of brain tumors over 200% after
Yeah.
2 jabs of it. Yeah, it's like one of those. Interestingly as well, my best mate, who is like the equivalent of biological concrete, like that kid could swallow radium and be fine. She had the same jab as me at about the same time, and she's just got over like chronic hip pain and stuff from it as well. So
Crazy, absolutely crazy. I know when I was on the injection, I was on the depot injection for years, and I came off it this year, and I broke my foot a couple of years ago. I dropped a plate on it in the gym, and when I went in to the doctors and had said like, "Oh yeah, I broke my foot," and they said, "Well, have you had any other fractures? Because like a side effect of this depot injection is like that you'll get brittle bones." And I was like, I never knew this. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean brittle bones? Like, you never told me this. And they were like, oh, yeah, yeah, it's like a really common side effect. I
yeah,
was like, great. Glad I know that now. I'll be off this then. Thanks. It's bizarre how little
honestly,
research they need to give stuff to women.
it's terrifying. And the more I've been going down these wormholes in the last 2 years to try and fix myself, the more I'm like, how is some of this legal? I mean, I'm not a
Yeah.
doctor. I've just been, researching, doing my own googling, and I will caveat by saying there are a lot of women that these things really help and do really work for, but for me I've been left with a bunch of problems that potentially could have been really prevented. So
Yeah.
just my, like I said, my little tinfoil hat moment.
No, 100%. I think this is the thing, but this is the beauty of this sort of like podcast where we can give that a little bit of a voice and say like, researched these things before? Because the amount, like when I started on contraception when I was like 13, 14, I didn't know that there was this many side effects. I didn't know that contraception hasn't really ever been properly like researched and tested on women. They were just like, oh, this seems to work. Here you go, use this. You'll be all right. Like you don't know these things until,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's a
As
bit
more
late.
as well as yeah, and the more I get into strongman and the more I understand things like weirdly PED use and like testosterone use and stuff like that, actually the more it's changed my opinion on it of like you wouldn't give a 13-year-old boy testosterone unless there was a severe medical issue going on. So why are we given things that block, tweak, change our hormones at such a young age, like handed out like Smarties? Like it really, it makes no sense to me. But again, I'm not a doctor, don't know all the nuances, but just I think yeah, weirdly coming into strongman has changed my opinion on it a lot as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, I feel very similar. I think about it that like if you ever speak to anybody in the gym, I know a lot of lads like take gear, and it does start quite young a lot of the time. And whenever I've sort of thought about it, I think at minimum age 21, you don't want to be looking at any sort of gear until you are at least 21, if not 25, because that's when at least your brain's fully developed. But
Yeah.
with girls, they're like, you're having a bad
In
period
theory.
here. Have some hormones, off you go. You'll probably be okay. We don't know long term, but you'll be all right for a little bit.
As well, so many women that I know that have been prescribed those things at a young age have ended up with like PCOS, endo. I think the evidence isn't there yet, but I do feel like there's got to be a correlation with that somewhere along the
Yeah.
lines. You know, for example, I was told, well, we'll give you a surgery. We don't think there's going to be any endometriosis there. They removed 10 centimeters of it from around my organs. Like, and I'm just like, well, it clearly was then. Like, it clearly was.
Yeah, yeah. I
So yeah.
think I think that over the next few years, I think there'll be a big shift in women's healthcare. I think it's coming, and I think it's not going to be good for people who've put these things in place for us. But anyway, that's a whole other podcast, isn't it? But right, so getting back to this one then. So what's your strong woman low?
I initially was very scared of Atlas stones, and I think I was like very nervous about like shifting them and about like doing them, as I've seen from my little PB the other week that I sent you because I was just like, Becca, I did a good thing. We're now improving and moving with those. But yeah, I think at first they were definitely something, and I found them immensely frustrating because it wasn't even that I was necessarily really bad at them. I just found them mentally, I was just like, I'm going to drop that on myself and really hurt myself. Like, they were the one thing I think at the start I found quite scary, but now I'm just like, give me the big rock.
I love the big rock. Is there anything that you've found that you've struggled with in the crossover from rugby to strong woman? Strong man, strong woman. We're calling it strong woman on this.
That's really interesting. No, in a lot of ways, I found that like it's a lot of the same kind of personalities. It's a lot of the same kind of mindset. It's even, for example, like I know a lot of people post comp, they end up with like post comp flu. And I genuinely believe that because I spent, again, week on week on a rugby pitch getting run into by people for years, my nervous system's so either battered or conditioned one way or the other that like even comps don't tend to give me comp flu. It like I find that it's crossed over really, really well. I would say it's been again the whole PD thing is really interesting because in rugby, like you cannot even have certain brands of creatine. It's all got to be informed sport. It's all got to be very by the book. Whereas then
Yeah.
I come into strongman and there's obviously a lot of athletes with a very different perspective on that. And I think that's where I've had to not just go, well, that's a wrong thing, and just open my mind a little bit and go, okay, why do you think that way? And I found that interesting. But yeah, overall, it's like it's very, very similar. There's a lot of similar kind of people. And what I love, I think, the most is that you'll be at a comp and your competitors will be screaming you on.
Yeah.
Like, I will never forget my first comp. I was there in this little gym in Plymouth going for an axle press PB. And like, as I got it to here, like I could see the women, I kind of glimpsed, and the women around me, there was about 20, 30 of them. It was a really well attended comp. They were screaming for me to get that rep. And I was just like really excited with my little axle. So
Yeah,
yeah, I love that part of it. I really do.
yeah, I think that's what brings a lot of people into it. I think is when you do that first comp, because I had a very similar experience where you do it, and I was used to like freestyle dance competitions where people were like so bitchy, and I got into this, and all of a sudden everyone's like really supportive and wanting you to do well, and you're like, this is the weirdest competition environment I've ever been in. Because it's the same with rugby as well, like, especially on
Yeah.
the field, like, it's aggressive, isn't it? Like, you get aggressive with the other team because that's part of it. Whereas in strongman, you're like, go, yeah, do well. Then you're like, oh shit, no, that makes it worse for me.
I am like the least aggressive person as well. So I had to really like learn to tap into my aggression for rugby. It's something I spent a lot of time on because I'm always like, I will also even deal with aggression at me in life with sarcasm or like, I'd rather be sarcastic and like annoying, quite
Yeah.
frankly. So I'd have these girls come up to me and they'd be like, you know, I'm going to headbutt you and like, all physically trying to like headbutt me or grab me. And I'd just be like, has anyone ever told you you look so pretty today? Like fully dealing with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a weird thing, isn't it? But so moving on
Please
then,
do.
if you could tell yourself something when you first started Strong Woman to what you know now, what would you want your past self to know?
Don't forget to sweat the small stuff. So by that I mean, yeah, it's really fun to yeet up a heavy log all the time, but don't forget to do those little boring stabilizers and core stuff. I think that's where I've spent the last year and a half having to work really hard on that stuff as part of my recovery. And yeah, don't just throw logs and rocks around, do the small stuff as well, because it only helps your body. And I
It's a
think
very
as
sensible
well, like,
thing to say.
yeah, I'm in a unique position as being a strong wife as well. So for me as well, like I obviously see comps from lots of different angles. And I think as well, like sometimes you have to trust the process a little bit. So you'll see the person that you love literally putting their body on the line on a stage for, as we all know, sometimes a slightly rubbish plastic trophy. And in your head, you're like, why stop? You're blowing out your own eyeballs. But actually, you it's tapping into that moment and being present with them and helping them in that minute, which is the most important thing.
Yeah. And we're in an interesting position here as well in terms of strong women, where we're like on the cusp of it growing and exploding, but we're not quite there yet. What do you think needs to happen? What
Yeah.
changes do you think needs to happen in strong women to get it over the hill into this next era of everyone's welcome? We've got loads of people here. It's a household name sport.
Yeah, so I've been really privileged to be at the real forefront with women's rugby exploding in the last 2 years. And I think some of the reasons we've done that is because A, creators and women themselves within the sport are speaking out. We have to be our own loudest, proudest advocates because we have to show other women what an example of a strong woman looks like. And I'm a firm believer is that you can be a competitive average to be an amazing advocate for your sport in the values that you bring and in the way that you treat other people. So I think we need to be shouting about our sport and showing like you don't have to be going to compete at worlds, or you can train it in your gym and love it, and you can do it as
Yeah.
part of a hybrid program, or you can just do it for the absolute giggles on a Sunday afternoon. I think we need to be creating more opportunities for women. So again, a lot of women, they see the strongman kit in gyms, and because they don't know how to use it, they might be quite put off. So one thing Matt and I are currently working at with Mammoth Strength Club, which is one of our local strength providers, on like a strongman accreditation course, which is really exciting. So more PTs are going to be able to be like accredited strongman coaches, which I think is really sick.
Yeah.
And I'm keen to be like getting more women in and going, you can do a log press, you can do that. You know, here's how to do the basics for fun. And I think as well, we need to be making sure there is good representation at local comps. So, in the sense of getting along a big name in the sport, just if you are a big name in the sport, go down to a local comp if you can. Go and referee or hand out a medal. Like, you know, getting a Lucy Underdown, for example, to a local comp is
Yeah.
such a big draw, or getting a Rebecca Roberts or Rebecca Morgan turning up. You know, those people that are competing and doing well in the space.
Yeah, I do. I
Those
do
people
think
that are
that's a
doing
big
competing and
part.
doing well in the space.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
needs to be there. I think we're still. I agree with that totally because I feel like we're still at a point where we're not. We're not. It's not big enough yet to sort of not be able to volunteer. And I think this is just an interesting point in general within strongman is I think people have almost got a false sense of how far ahead it is. Like even at OSG, all those people that are there are volunteers. Like people are still volunteering time to keep this sport running and keep these competitions working for people. And I think people have forgotten that part. Like no one, I don't know anyone really who's getting paid decent money to ref or load or spot or anything like that. And I think that needs, yeah, the more people that are willing to volunteer and help, the more this sport will grow, the faster the chances are that we will then be able to pay refs, pay spotters, pay loaders. So it's, yeah, I totally agree with you there. We're on the cusp, but we're not quite there yet, are we?
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's just something we need to be shouting about as women in the sport as well. Like I was stood at a Women's Six Nations game in Cardiff Arms Park in 2019, and there was about 2,000 people in the crowd to watch the Red Roses, which that was considered a good crowd at the time. In 2022, I was also the person stood at Twickenham on the pitch delivering the match ball at the first ever Red Roses solo fixture, which sold 60,000 tickets. And so I know how this growth can happen and how quickly,
Yeah,
especially when we are shouting about it from inside. And the thing I want to add to that as well is male advocates are so important. So the strong men that are turning up for us, that are choosing to follow podcasts, that are hyping up female athletes, sorry, you're doing the Lord's work because you're normalizing female athletes having voice and being in spaces. You are helping in your own way. Like Luke Davies obviously is a massive advocate, and the way he speaks to and around female athletes I've also personally found very respectful.
yeah,
I'm trying to think of some great examples because there's so many. I have to say that's something that I've seen probably as much, if not more than strongman than rugby, but that is definitely on the shift, is that the male athletes are so behind the women. And
yeah,
again, you go to comps and you see like male athletes cheering on a female athlete, and it might be that that female athlete is going for a 60-kilo log press, and yes, that's that man's warm-up weight, maybe, but that's a particular PB for that athlete, male, female, whoever. So they are able to set those gender differences aside and go, that's a great win for that person on that day. And that's something I
yeah.
really love and respect as well.
Yeah, I do agree. I think that's exactly the same as well. I think strong man is such a supportive base for strong women that like definitely different than compared to other sports. Like I think this is the beauty of this sport is that even though the strong women isn't as big as the men's, it's getting there, and the men are the ones that are helping push it along too. They're not there like, oh no, not the women. Like they're like, come on, let's go. Like there to support. So I totally agree with you. We're not. This isn't a feminist rage podcast. Before anyone gets on my back about it, we like men too here.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes until you wear headphones. Lol. I'm sorry, with headphones on. Nah, just kidding.
I
So,
honestly,
well,
that day I was just sat there, the amount of memes I could have had. I had like so many locked and loaded, and I was just like biting my tongue a little bit. I just sent you the one that I did make, and I was just like, again, this is male, female, whoever. If you're going to be disrespectful to a ref, you instantly just look like a tit. Like you
yeah.
just do. You
I think
instantly look
again
like a
though,
tit. And even if you disagree, just take a breath, walk away, have a moment, and then articulate later why
yeah,
you disagree with that decision. That's fine. It's human to disagree. It's not okay just to call people weird bitches or whatever.
I know. Still, it's still a flex because it's given me a great nickname. But I totally agree, and I think the problem is with that sort of behaviour in comps is because it is so rare and it doesn't happen. When it does happen, it does explode into something that's a little bit too much. But that is because the majority of strong man and strong woman is sound. Like that, I would say 99% of people that I've met, I get on with. It's not a sport of divvies. It's a sport of really nice inclusive people a lot
Yeah.
of the time,
Yeah.
but perfect. Well, I think that was very interesting. So, on to everybody's favourite part, the silly goose. I'm working out a way that I can get the silly goose to play while we're on the podcast so we can all dance along with it, but I can't do that at the moment. So, we'll have to break quickly for the silly goose and then we will be back.
Silly goose. It's silly goose time, where our lips get loose and our minds run free. Silly goose. It's silly goose time, where we chat a load of shit that's of absolutely no use. It's silly goose time.
Right, back in from Silly Goose. I have really. There's two things that I want to talk about, and it's not really a Silly Goose question. So I apologise for the fact that it's not a Silly Goose question, but I'd just like to have your opinion on it. So there's two things. I've spoke about one before, which is belly button stalks. Now, I had a really interesting experience last week because I got to do a cadaver session with the uni. One of the I don't know what to call it, bodies had a belly button that they'd dissected off, and I asked the woman about belly button stalks because I was really interested. She showed me it on the person. I was like, this is insane. So basically, you have a stalk at the back of your belly button that attaches like right through your stomach, and like grounds everything basically.
Yeah.
But so first of all, I don't think belly buttons should be where they are. I think it's odd that that's like, say that's the first part that you get when you like created, all comes from that belly button, like it blossoms out. I think this is how it works. I mean, I don't know science, but I just think I know it's a central point, but like it's like the least important point in my mind. Like surely your belly button should be on the back of your head or something. Do you know what I mean? Or like on your chest where your heart is. What do you
Like a
think?
soft foreign.
Like I feel like I wouldn't be
So
surprised
for
if my belly
me,
button was in the back of my head.
I feel like it's our whole system and like our whole development is just very, very strange. And I just think also as well, like, why do you not just use the bum hole? Like, you've already got that system developing. Like, I know you technically start with like, don't you just start as an anus in the womb or something?
I
Did I
think
imagine that?
no, I've heard that before. We don't fact check on here though, so we're not checking it.
So
But I've heard that before.
why are we not like developing that way? Why does this come in as well? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I totally agree. So my next point, moving on from that as well, is that I saw something on TikTok the other day that basically says that we are just giant donuts because we have one open hole from the top of our body to the bottom of our body.
Well, if your bum hole's permanently open, I'm a bit concerned for you.
Well, to be fair, I have got IBS. It's terrible, so it is most of the time. But no, I'd seen it the other day, and I was like, "No, we are just giant donuts, aren't we? One big open hole, well, mostly open, all the way from the top to the bottom, and like all this bit is just like outside donut." With that being said, moves on to my next silly goose question: what type of donut would you be as a human donut?
So there's this company called Who Cult. They are insane. They are in Cardiff and a few other places around South Wales, and the donuts are about this big. And I'm not
Nice.
joking you. They're the like Matt and I will tell you when we're trying to go through there when he's water cutting, it takes every bit of patience and every bit of like stress in his entire body not to get one of these donuts. But they do one with like a half a Biscoff topping and like icing on the other side. So if I was going to be a human donut, I would probably be like a Biscoff combo.
Oh, that's a good shout. Yeah, that's a good shout. I think if it was me, I'd be one of the caramel cream custard ones from Greg's because they are just in my head the most elite donuts ever. If I need a donut, I know that I can go to Greg's and get one of them, and it will be on point.
Well, that's reminded me. You had a silly goose a while ago, and I sort of know the answer to it.
Ooh, answer another silly goose. Yeah, let's go.
So that reminded me because again, the ADHD is ADHDing aggressively this morning. So caramel donuts, I always used to eat those when I worked in dog rescue, and I worked in dog rescue at Battersea in Old Windsor. And one of your silly gooses was, do deaf dogs know they're deaf? Yeah. So I can sort of tell you, having done behavior and stuff like that as well, I was a dog trainer in my past life. They kind of are aware. They are aware that they like from the kind of the behavior that they show, they will be prone to doing things more like mirroring other dogs in the household. So they kind of self-adapt to the consciousness that like the other dogs do things in slightly different ways. So for example, a lot of deaf dogs, you'll notice the owner will recall one dog and the deaf dog will look at the other dog and then come with a recall. So there's certain things that they do that indicate that they kind of are aware that they're different to other dogs. They may not know that they're deaf, but they know that they're different.
Ah, interesting. It does make sense that I can understand how they think they're different, but I definitely still believe that they definitely don't know that they're deaf and they have no understanding of that. But I like that they
Obviously-
definitely know they're different.
Unfortunately, obviously, dogs can't talk to us at the moment. I would love them to be able to talk to us, but they can't talk to us. But I've worked with several deaf dogs, and one of the best ways you can help them to learn is by mirroring.
Interesting. I'll use that next time I'm looking after that other deaf dog that I was looking after.
Yeah,
I love stuff like that. I love answering other silly gooses while we're already on one. I had a fleeting thought of another silly goose, but I've lost it already. It's already in the ether.
So I worked with a deaf dog, and basically one of the ways we taught hand signals was, like, for example, we had another dog that knew a sit, and the dog got a reward, and then we worked with the deaf dog similarly, and we basically reinforced a load of visual cues with treats. So you do like a fun little game where you clap your hands, give a treat, clap your hands again, like do a fun little clap and give a treat, and very quickly the dog knows I've done well when you start doing the little clap. So you can start to teach them how when they've done well and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's pretty
really
interesting.
Clever. Oh, I love that. Well, if you've got a deaf dog,
Can I ask
Gemma's
you
your girl. Yeah, of course you can ask me a silly goose. Yeah, go right ahead.
So another weird unknown fact about me is that we have a chameleon called Spyro.
Yeah, I've seen this
He
chameleon on
is amazing.
Instagram.
He's my son. Yeah, he legitimately thinks I've birthed him. Like, he's so overly attached to me, it's unreal. So I wondered, if you were going to be a lizard, what lizard would you be?
I don't know. I feel like I'd be a Komodo dragon because it's the closest I would get to being a dragon while being within this lizard like genre. It's not genre, species. Close enough. But yeah, I feel like I'd be a Komodo dragon, big, aggressive, like happy. The only other thing I would be is an iguana, because I feel like iguanas just don't give a fuck at all. They're mental, aren't they? Have you seen like the iguana fight like videos on Instagram? They are just crackheads. Iguanas are like the like lizard version of raccoons in my head.
Yeah, they're terrifying.
They're just mental, aren't they? So it'd either be a Komodo dragon just because I want to be a dragon, or an iguana because crackhead vibes. What lizard would you be?
So I'd probably be a tegu because they're just quite cool and they've got those massive claws. Like, I feel like, again, they look like you don't want to fuck around and find out with those. Or one of those frilled lizards, the ones that like you annoy them and like a full on neck frill comes out.
Yeah.
Because
Like
they just
total
look like a little
overreaction.
tiny boy going on the side of the road. Yeah, they go from 0 to 1,000 so quick, and so they go from being like a tiny boy by the side of the road to being like,
Yeah, I love that. Love those vibes.
I love that. That's me in a bar when an unwanted male approaches my friends.
That would be a handy trick to have, wouldn't it? Imagine if we'd evolved with those neck frills where we could just be like, fuck off, boys.
I don't know if you've ever seen my comp photos, but I definitely have them anyway.
That's just chins. We've all got them. That's my 90-kilo life.
Peak
Keeping me well away from under 82 kilos. Nightmare. Well, I think on that note, then, that's been a lot of silly goosing. And I appreciate the silly goose back too. So thank you very much for being on the podcast. Do you have any final words for everybody?
That is a good question. Be nice to people. Lift heavy stuff. Don't drop it on your head.
Hell yeah. Words to live by. And where can people find you on socials? I'll tag all your socials in the episode as well. So let people know where you are.
I am at Strong with Jem. Jem.
Awesome stuff. And yeah, if you need to find that, it'll all be in the show notes as well. But thank you very much. And I will see you all next time. Goodbye for now. Thanks for listening to this episode of Strong Woman Highs, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to support the podcast, then please give us a follow on Instagram. Or if you would like, we're also on buymeacoffee.com/strongwomanhighs. This is where you can send us tips, or you can also join our membership area, which is $5 a month or £4 a month. It's the silly gosling level. We'll post out any extra content that we get on there, and hopefully a few little like free giveaways of things as well. The podcast currently doesn't cost a lot to run, which is what we're trying to keep it as, but we would like to be able to cover our costs, and also once those costs are covered, any profit that is made on Strong Woman Highs will be getting saved up and put into a pot for future Strong Woman competitions that we can sponsor. So if you have a Strong Woman competition that you'd like to be sponsored, or If you want to be on the podcast, then give us a shout, send me a message on Instagram or on YouTube, anywhere else you can get us, and we'll get it sorted, because the more women that we can get on, the better. Thanks for listening and watching. Bye!